Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. If you're watching this on video, this is not a podcast. This is a video where I talk about podcasting. I do make a podcast out of the audio, which you can get at podcastpontifications.com. If you're a business-focused podcaster, you care about one audience. Well, two sides of that audience. You care about customers, current customers, and future customers. And that's really it. Sure, it's important to have other people like your employees, like the industry leaders, all the other people out there understanding that you have a podcast and sharing your show and talking about you. But let's face it, the most important clients, listeners you have are your clients, future or current. Keep that in your mind. And let's think about how can we let customers know that we actually have a podcast. Well, we do lots of things. Sending emails, letters, notes, and but have you really thought about actually the physical space you occupy and how you can use the physical space where your business is contained to help spread the word to your most important listeners, current and future clients, that you have a podcast? Here's what I'm talking about doing. I'm suggesting that, again, if you have physical space where you routinely have clients come through, like I ran a large-scale agency here in Phoenix. Great place. We had lots and lots of clients, and we had 5 or 6 different conference rooms, and we had clients all the time. Current clients, new clients, potential clients, old clients. Everybody's walking through all the time. If you're in that situation, here's my suggestion to you. This is going to sound weird, but still bear with me for a moment. I want you to take one of those conference rooms, and I want you to think about converting it into a public podcast recording space. I know, crazy and radical, Evo. But I know a lot of people who do record their business podcast from their office, and they hide the stuff. They hide it in the back. They record on the weekends or at nights, and they pull the stuff out of a box, and they got a small area. That's a mistake, I think. Put it forward. Find a conference room and set it up properly so that it looks amazing. Don't set it to look up like a DJ booth. We're not doing that. You can't have cables strung and ran everywhere. I don't want you to permanently affix silly things like a 32-channel mixer. No. This is 2019. Podcasting is low profile, but can look very, very good. Take the time to take one of your small conference rooms and convert it to your recording space. Not a dedicated recording studio that can only be used. Look, I know spaces at a premium in agencies or any other firm. I get that. You want to be able to reuse this space, so don't make it to where that's the only thing that happens here, and then that's going a little too far, right? But the similar equipment or the same equipment you use to make a podcast sound good and a podcast studio look good can also afford someone to have a chance to get in to just use the room as a conference room if in fact they need it. So set your room up as a very good looking space where you record podcasts. Now here's the trick. Once you've done that, use the space. Please use the space. But more importantly, when you've got a guest, when you've got a client coming in, if it's an existing client, book a little extra time and record some content with that client while they're there. But here's the real trick. If you've got a prospect coming in, you want to make sure that when you bring the prospect into your office, into the big meeting room where you're going to be trying to sell them on your goods and services, make sure you show them your podcast recording studio. And here's the important part, make sure someone is in there using it. That's right. Not just, hey, here's this little place in the corner that we set up for podcasting. No. Here's our showcased podcast recording studio. And in fact, here is our person number 1 recording and having a conversation with person number 2 or something else, actually using it. Bonus points. And here's the real good trick. If in fact your client is coming, your prospect is coming, make sure that at some point in time, the lead person on the account, the person who is going to have the most interface time with this, or the expert make sure that that person who is on your team is going to be recorded on that podcast while the guest is there. Even if they have to say, sorry, I have to go for like 15 minutes and just do this thing, I'll be right back. Great. You may think, oh, why would you bring the big person out? Because it showcases how important they are. It showcases that this person is such an expert, they've got a podcast. Ooh. Or this person is such an expert, they're being interviewed on a podcast. That helps you. You're exposing your most important customers to this. If you can, book some time with that client. Let's talk about, I know you're going to be a customer of ours eventually, but let's talk about your business. Let's talk about the problems we can solve. This problem, what happens for you. Utilize that space really well. And also, outside of your customers, use the space. Give your people time during the day to go and record their stuff in there. Get them into that routine. Now, here's another great idea. If you've done it right, if you've put some high-quality equipment. Oh, and by the way, let's talk about price tag. If this costs you $2,000, okay, maybe if you have to sound condition a new room because you've got reflective walls and hard floors and all that kind of stuff. Okay, maybe $5,000, which I can guarantee you is a lot less than IT is paying for all of the electronics one new person needs on your team. So that number should not be scary to anybody who's used to provisioning equipment for a new employee to come along. And by the way, this is something you do once, and it's used forever, and it's used every day, not just as a podcasting studio. But if you do it right, and you're not buying a 37-channel mix and a bunch of other stuff you don't need, a very low-profile, good quality stuff, a lot of that's portable. So the next time your company is sponsoring an event somewhere, maybe it's a local meet and greet, maybe it's a networking lunch, grab your mics, grab your cables, grab your Zoom H6 portable recorder, grab your headphones and your headphone amplifier, and set up at that event and do some talking at that event. Record some people who are from that event that you can then later repurpose into your show. Super pro tip, if you're the kind of company that likes to go to trade shows and set up a big booth on a trade show floor, those are terribly expensive. It's not that much more, because you've already done this for your in-office studio, to set up a little spot off the side to record while you're there at the trade show. And I don't mean just record at random. If you're going to do that, if you're going to be on the expo floor for 2 or 3 days, and you're going to have a podcast booth there, then I want you to print out your agenda. I want you to take a 6-foot-tall cardboard piece of documentation and list out 8:30 a.m., CEO of Company X. 9:30 a.m., conversations with whomever. List out what the agenda is, set up some chairs, let people watch you have these conversations live. And you're recording all of them for use later on your podcast. Yeah, I guess you could do it live, but it's a bad idea in my opinion. There's so many things that can go wrong with that. But recording, nothing's going to go wrong with your recording. You're not reliant on a Wi-Fi signal if you're recording things in person, which is awesome. And we all know that Wi-Fi signals at conferences are anything but awesome. I'm suggesting, to recap what I just said, that if you've got a business podcast, that you make it one of the most public things that you do. You give it the attention that you want your podcast to deserve. You give it such a great look, such a sheen, that it is worthy of being prominent and on display all the time when you're in your office, making sure that your clients and your prospects see it all the time, making sure you're using it for the events that you sponsor, and certainly any trade shows you might go to. Let's use the podcast to really build business. Now, if you would like some assistance in figuring out ways to actually set this all up and do it, and what's the good strategy behind it, hey, this is what I do. I help businesses strategize podcasting and put it in place so they can do it on and on and on. Reach out to me, evo@podcastlaunch.pro. Podcastlaunch.pro is where you can get more information about the services that I offer, and I'll be back next week. See you Monday for another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers!